The first annual Ramp Dinner fundraiser for the newly formed New River Gorge Historical Society was held Saturday, April 4th, 2026 at the Hawks Nest State Park Lodge in West Virginia. The fundraiser benefited the New River Gorge Historical Society. The host speaker was David Sibray. Other speakers were Doug Wood, Jody French Burr, and Tara Tyree.
Other diners are leaving, going out the back door.
They're escaping before they have to hear.
Well, they're going to walk
It's a good problem to have. We had far more people than we expected to have. And Jennings, our president, is downstairs serving, so I'm going to real quickly mention this, why we've created this New River Gorge Regional Historical Society. The reason is there are so many endangered investment resources in which we could invest. There are many resources, historic structures, graveyards, cemeteries, cultural sites that we have not yet invested in, that aren't necessarily endangered, but that we could invest in. And we're at a point in West Virginia's evolution, the beginning of a new future, if you will, in which people are coming here, they're spending money on visiting here, they're investing here, they're coming here to live. And they want to see these cultural resources saved in many cases. It's something bankable. So I'm going to talk about the history here, but I'm going to be talking about it in terms of the economics. I think we all know the social reasons that being able to visit these historic sites is a great thing to do. So, but I'm going to get into the economics because we have some things going on that aren't absolutely ideal, but that's the way of the world. So, why invest in historic resources? What are historic resources? So here we have Thurman, West Virginia, which many of you all know or may know. These buildings right now are safe, but the National Park Service has lost a bunch of funding. And as a result, they've determined that perhaps the best thing to do would be to demolish some of the other structures. And it's really a matter at this point, seemingly, of there's just not the funding to do anything, and their decision has been to go ahead and let go of those structures. But I won't dive into this in this discussion because it seems like there might be some solutions coming along, but that's not for me to say. But historic resources, what are they? I think one of the best definitions is historic resources may include structures and landscapes that link us with the past. It's important for us to know our past, and I believe that this is the key to our future too, is building on the best of what we've created of a civilization here in southern West Virginia. Right now, just down the street, the historic Tyler Tavern is being restored. The grants and funding have come through the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia, a board of which I sit on. Through the National Park Service, through the efforts of people who simply believe in saving this. There were two ladies, sisters, who during COVID realized that this building that their great-great-grandfather had built and run back in the early 1800s still existed. They had no idea it existed. And they found me. I'm also a realtor who specializes in historic properties, and they found some of my PR out there, and they called me, and they came and took a look at it, and they called their
And where is that?
Okay, this is in downtown Ansted. It's just 3 miles from here. And people hadn't, it's off the main drag, it's off 60, it's on an old section of the old James River and Canal Turnpike. But They saw the structure, they called their kids, they said, there will be no inheritance, we're taking all of the money and we're investing it in restoring this structure. So right now, they've just taken this, which was, had been a porch, was filled in as a kitchen, and they've removed that and it's become a kitchen, it's become a porch again. There were bathrooms, electricity, HVAC, that's all being removed. It's all being taken back to the 1860, 1870 period. There will still be air conditioning and heating, but it's going to be very subtle. You're not going to be aware of it. And out back, they'll be putting up, it'll look like the old stables at the tavern, but it'll actually be a convocation center and bathrooms. An example of a thing that many people may not think of as historic, but the fact that this oak at the Oak Supper Club at Pipestem remains, that's valuable. That's something people can go see, engage in, take their kids to see, get a selfie in front of. And that means, tourism-wise, more people staying to see one other thing. The Penn Springs Hotel. This is a picture of Candace Helms of the CVB, the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Summers County, with two people who are now have the building under contract. They plan to turn the hotel into a hotel again. It had been a state prison, it had been a private girls' school, but now hopefully it'll go back to being a hotel. They see the potential of West Virginia. They're actually from the Washington, D.C. area. At Berkeley Springs, they've created a glamorous tent camping site called Firefly Ridge. But they came down here because they got involved in my web of public relations and real estate, and they realized this is something they wanted to do. So they're drawing together investors right now to close on this. But again, an example of some of the new people coming to the area who see the potential of growth here. And really, since COVID, we've gotten to that place. People began to leave the offices. People don't have to be in offices in cities now. They can work from home. And that's allowing people to move here and being part of this. And that's one of the reasons we started this historical society, because again, there are more people who are more interested in not only attending RAMPS feeds, but coming to meetings like this and learning how we can build out what we've created. Resources may include roads, cemeteries, old buildings, old factories, monuments, and interpretation. I say interpretation because I believe historic markers themselves become critical sites. There are places that may not be historic themselves, but you can get a selfie at. And I'll talk more about this. It engages tourists, it engages people locally to understand what we have. Who were we just talking about the Whipple Company store earlier? One amazing resource here in Fayette County that we're hoping that we can help see restored in time. That's Brad Paisley came down and got his picture out in front for a video. This is a historic black cemetery at Cassius Hill down in the southern end of Summers County, which is part of our historical society area. And the Big Bend Tunnel with plenty of cool fern growing on the walls inside. Historic mill that's been saved down at the Cooper's Mill, also in Summers County. Structures and landscapes that link us with the past. Again, it's about that link, and it's about building that link. This is another example of the historic Arnold, or Laura Jackson Arnold house. The historic West Union. Again, just these are resources all over the state that are investable resources. And there are certain kinds of commercial investors that are drawn to these buildings for many reasons. One, because they exist. They're in good shape often. So why invest in historic resources? If you all have been to Summers County to the Otter and Oak, this is a coffee shop and dress store. and it has been remodeled. Well, it's been historically renovated. So in this case, many of the old stores of the early 1900s, late 1800s had mezzanine levels and big plate glass windows, so you could look in the windows and see up on the second floor. You could see into a second floor. You could see merchandise. Yes, sir.
Wasn't that a bank at one time too?
That I don't know.
I think so, from the lady that came up, you met her when she was restored before she opened it up.
It may well have been a bank, but the matter
I mean, I don't want to
Yeah.
discourage your historical information yourself.
You're crushing my dream, man.
I know that. I come for that, just the ramps and you.
Yeah. Now, I think because of the size of the display windows, that it indicates to me that, because you don't need to get in there and look at all that
Well,
money.
it's different storefront than what was there 60 or 70 years ago.
Yeah, I think it may have been closed for a bank, but again, that was in a period when I wasn't paying attention to it. But this slide's out of place, you wouldn't have known it, but it is. This is the Barger Springs, which is a historic site that now some of the gang in Summers County is working on putting on the register. As a result of actually the sale of the Penn Springs Hotel, that has created energy that's causing other people to say, let's invest in fixing some of these other historic resources. In this case, Barger Springs was one of the later built spring resorts. It had a resort building, but there were a lot of people who camped there and had cabins there. So in some ways it was more of a locally oriented Springs affair than perhaps the Green Bar or Sweet Sulphur, or Salt Sulphur, or the Pence. And we just simply looked at how to take what is going on there, putting up some interpretive markers, stabilizing the site, looking at filling in, looking to see if there's any way to get the spring itself to work again, for the water to be. So we're looking at grants for that. So how does one do this? Well, there's public and private funding available. I mean, it takes work to do it. It just doesn't rain money on any of this stuff. But there is government support, which I'll talk to about. Corporate support. More people coming into West Virginia are seeing the potential of investing in this sort of thing. And then there are investable models out there, and I have a ton of them, which I could share with people about how these things can get done. Not in West Virginia yet, but that's happening. But it's being done in other states, and it can be done here. So another reason to invest in historic preservation. Preservation is often, not always, but is often cheaper than new construction. And you'll hear people argue with me, and I will argue back. The reuse of existing buildings avoids the cost of acquiring the land. It avoids the demolition and disposal costs of taking down a building and landfilling it. That is expensive. And the price of new materials is going up and down all the time now. So there's real reason to secure what you've already got. Instead of building a new building, fix the building that you have. That's the idea. How does the community how does the community benefit? Rehabilitation takes people to do it. It's labor intensive, and it means us training skilled artisans to do this work. Right now, in some of the preservation jobs we're doing, we're having to hire people from Ohio or Virginia and bring them in and put them up in hotels. Our group, the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia, we're trying to build schools, institutions to help train people to be those skilled craftsmen that we need. So by employing locals, more money stays in our economy. Also, preservation shifts spending from global supply chains to local markets. Let's keep it here. Preservation allows us to do that. It can't be exported. It can't. We can do it all here and keep all the money here. Yes, sir.
Another aspect that goes along with that, there's environmental benefits often with, you think of the embedded energy that established in that building, that you're now having all the extra environmental impacts, both with disposal and starting with raw materials.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that we're going to be seeing more people talk about that in Southern West Virginia. If this speech does nothing else, it will convince more people to do that sort of thing. And I share this information, which is pretty obvious, I think, with everyone I can get it to. I like to share information, no sense me holding on to it. So, historic landscapes outperform in property value stability. As an example, Capitol Street in Charleston. It's a shining example of how we took a street that was and made it into something special. Lewisburg is another example of a town that has worked to do it right, and they make sure that if you change a doorknob, you have to go before the Landmarks Commission to get permission to do that. But as a result, you end up with these spectacular and very attractive landscapes. So these kinds of landscapes experience slower declines during turndowns. Hinton is an example of a town that its decline, it's been over a long time, but it didn't go all the way to the bottom like it might have. They recover faster after recessions. They maintain premiums, scarcity, and character both drive up price, I can tell you as a realtor. Residential property prices increase 9 to 12% after they get on the National Register. And then local historic districts with architectural controls. If you develop a Landmarks Commission that is an architectural review commission, you can see 12 to 23% price premiums. A lot of people complain. My boss, Mr. Grist, and my broker in Lewisburg, it drives him nuts that he has to go through everything being in a historic district. But he's in an incredibly valuable place to have property, and he won't let go of it. He'll just grumble and continue to own that property and enjoy it. Heritage tourism equals higher spending, and that's in the New Gorge region with the new national park, very important to all of us. So, heritage tourism is the largest sector of the tourism market anywhere. When I go to the beach, and I go to the beach every year, or wherever I go, I inevitably take the folks with me to go to the Crab Shack or to go to the Lighthouse. There's always something cultural going on in every vacation, which is why that heritage tourism is so important. People want authenticity, especially now in the age of AI. I think we all want things that we can latch onto and say, this is real and it's been real for a long time. Heritage travelers consistently stay longer, they spend more money on trips, they seek local goods, dining and lodging. Sometimes they're going to go to the Wendy's, but they're also going to look for the local venue to go and eat at. And interpretation is the multiplier. This all works great just when you go into a beautiful historic district, but if you, and I'm very much an interpreter. I like putting up historic markers. I like using the internet to express to people what we have here. So without interpretation, you've got just a historic site, which is great, but if you just put up a marker, if you put up a web page, if there's some way to connect with people, you've turned that site into something all that much more. With interpretation, you end up with extended engagement, return visits again and again, and the word of mouth. Oh, look what we did, and we shared this online with our friends, this experience. Interpretation of historic resources converts static assets into recurring revenue streams. Again, I know this is getting into economics, but there's money involved in all this. It does. Public incentives generate returns. So when you are in one of these historic districts, there are grants and tax credits available. So a little background on this is I think of historic districts as economic engines. When the interstate highway system and our new modern highways were being developed, the Department of Commerce, the Department of the Interiors understood that our downtowns would begin to fail and crumble, it was inevitable that the businesses would go out to the new highways. Well, so the plan became, let's establish a plan to rescue these historic districts. And the plan was, we will give money for economic development of these districts if those plans protect the historic integrity, the architecture of these communities. So that's why sometimes I'll talk to people and I'll say, well, put the historic stuff aside. Let's talk about the economics. The government wants these buildings, once they go on the register, to stand forever and ever. And for a building to stand forever, it needs to be occupied and useful. A building just standing there is going to fail. Buildings are alive, they need to shift, they need to breathe. Bricks are really actually quite soft, as is the mortar. So I say to people when they have a house that they're not using, move furniture around. If you're storing stuff there, move it around, shift the weights every few months if you can. That way you keep the building active. You'll see in National Park Service buildings where they're being restored, you'll see vents, and I think maybe I have some pictures here. That's because you want the air to shift around. Even if it's hot or cold, that's okay. You don't want cold air being stuck inside. That causes moisture problems. So again, it's a matter of keeping the building active. But towards keeping these buildings standing, we now provide, in this state, 45% historic tax credit. So if you put in $100,000 fixing a building, you're going to get 45% of that back off your taxes, or you can take that information, bundle it, sell it to a bank. And there are ways, again, it's all about how to make this affordable, sustaining these buildings. We have 50% preservation grants. The preservation grant fund is dried up because the federal programming dried up, but we still have some money there available. But right now, when it's thriving, you can get 50% of a new roof paid for. 50% of it's harder than that. It doesn't just happen, but this money is available. There are facade renovation programs in many towns. They're developing them. Not so many in West Virginia right now, but it's coming along where they will pay for you just to fix the facade of the building. Main Street Design Assistance, if you can get the Main Street program into a town, they have money available for technical assistance right now. Point Pleasant, West Virginia is a thriving community that has we have a feller who's from there who went to New York City, moved to the Hamptons, sold a property in the Hamptons, which allowed him to buy 10 buildings, including the old Lowe Hotel in Point Pleasant, and they're all being restored. A friend of ours, Mike Giolis, is a consummate professional in preservation, and he's working on that project right now. And we don't have actually enough of these skilled artisans and professionals around because we've not been in a place where we've had this much investment going on. The National Park Service often provides grants. The Preservation Alliance, our organization, we provide a limited number of grants. The USDA has programs. There are programs across this government that are designed to help with the integrity of these historic resources. And there are plenty of that I haven't mentioned. I don't know what they are. I forget them every time I do the speech, and I said I need to write that down. I never get to it. But I will help, and I do have cards out somewhere, and I'm glad that anybody who needs help with this, let me know. I will try to get you the information you need. How to invest in historic resources. This is a historic landscape. There's nothing going on really in it. It just exists. This is from the top of Powell Mountain along US 19 out of Summersville. And it's a site that I've long hoped that we might at some point get a an overlook managed, installed and managed, because again, it's very rare for you to get a view from a mountain this high, and there's nothing from that mountain westward until you get to the Great Plains as high as this. So the view is unlimited. It's again a historic resource.
There's an old buffalo trail over there too, by the way. That was a route of the buffalo trail.
Which is why Buffalo Creek is named.
Yeah. You're smart, man.
Yeah. Identify significance. This is, so when you're looking at, and I'm bouncing ahead here, but when you're looking at how to build these resources again, it's looking at what is the significance of the resource. We're going to know kind of probably what a historic resource is, but being able to identify that, put that down, determine why it matters, be able to present this information when you go to the money to get a hold of this. And the statement of significance. I mention this because there's a town called Clayton in Summers County. And it's named Clayton because before the Civil War, a balloonist leaving Cincinnati, I believe, in the middle of the night, wrecked his balloon in the woods and had to come down off Keeney Mountain and came down to the town of Clayton, and it's named for him. But there's no marker, there's nothing to tell you that that incredible event ever happened. And yet there's reason, obviously, you know, I'm going to think that for us to make sure that there is, or for me to work with the Summers County Historical Society to try to see that we get a marker put up. So it's yet another thing to go and see. It's another reason for people to spend another hour here, because it does take a half an hour from anywhere to get out to Clayton. Establishing a viable use plan for any of these things. I mean, you really have to make sure that when you're trying to save something, that you're going to try to save it for a long time and put in the effort just besides doing a market. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir, can you just, yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
This is a site called Days Rock down in Summers County on Leatherwood Run, which is kind of near the Bluestone Dam. And it's something we're working on now. What do we do with this rock, which you can not really see well, but it says 1862, John Day Jr. I can't see what that says, but the matter is, during the Civil War, this scout, the story back, but we believe the background is this scout sat on top of this waterfall and carved that information into a rock. So there are some people who think that we should let the moss grow over and not tell anybody it's there and protect it by that means. I'm not arguing here, I'm just saying there's some people who believe just by leaving it alone, there will be a benefit. But I will argue it because I'm saying, well, what is the benefit of not knowing that it's there, or not telling anybody? It turns out it's on West Virginia American Water Company property, so we do think that we would have a corporation that might engage with us to save the rock and to put up. Their worry is that somebody's going to get a truck and somebody's going to get some chains and somebody's going to yank the thing off this. It's doable, it could be done, the right amount of beer and fuel, that could happen. So then the question is, what do we do with that? One idea is we put up a baluster or a balustrade, a banister to keep people from falling off, which would be bad. But at the same time, we take people to the rock. And now we have cameras that we can put up to make sure that when people are on property, the police can record, if necessary, what's going on. I just think that there's other answers. Lighting, having an interpretive marker up, you make the property more known to people, and so you would end up, having another tourist resource and protecting the rock at the same site. Thinking about design when we talk about saving these resources is, I believe, very important. Here's the grave of John Hinton as it appears now. And I drove by it 1,000 times and I never knew it was there. And I'm always looking at the historic landscape. I guess I thought it was some sort of electronic box or something. It just didn't make sense. So, but we used AI to create an evergreen hedge behind it, and suddenly this site is now, and we put up a marker, and that's the estimated cost of that. So, potentially for $800 in use or boxwood plus $2,000 for the historic marker, and going after matches to help cover that. we've turned this isolated thing that you can not really see. It's not isolated, it doesn't stand out. But suddenly, by careful design, we're able to turn that into a resource. But again, people are gonna grab the phone and say, look where I'm at.
So is this in downtown Hinton? You said?
It's in Avis. It's it's between the McDonald's and the historic district. And this is kind of starting to move forward. Right now, we're talking about the kind of hedge. I'm voting on having an evergreen hedge because it's always physically there, but it's also blocking grasses and other trees. Might not work, but boxwoods work well in that kind of a situation. Maintaining the investment, we're near the end of this, is important. When we build this stuff, it's important that we recognize that not everything stays forever. We've got to work on locking stuff down. The Beckley National Historic District, for instance, is a historic district that in the 90s was winning awards through the Main Street program. Its buildings were being reinvested in. That collapsed. The people left, things changed. And all of that is gone, and downtown Beckley is now on the Preservation Alliance's endangered list for the historic properties. It looks like there's a younger group of people now who are interested in coming back in and saying, how do we fix this? And I'm meeting with them and I'm saying, by educating yourself and understanding what the best methodologies would be. But my argument with them there is, make sure when you are saving this stuff to prepare for 15 years or 20 years later when nobody remembers who you are or when this stuff was done. Lock it in legally as best you can because that day will come. Another design concept, this is downtown Hinton. I went on to AI again one night. I hate to use AI, but the thing was, I took a black and white photo, I said, put in some modern tourists and some modern cars, colorize it, and spew it back out to me, and it did. And this is pretty much what downtown Hinton would look like restored. You've got the practical canopies, awnings. Were not just decorative, they are very important to keeping buildings cool in the hot summer days, which they get really hot down there. Another design concept, this is the Hawk's Nest Tunnel entrance down there. You can canoe down to it, or you might be able to hike to see it. But the matter is, it's not a resource that can be easily seen, and yet it was one of the seminal events in West Virginia history. West Virginia history, to me, is defined by this battle between man and industry. And at the John Henry Monument, you see the beginnings of the legends imbued with this struggle. And so right now, here next month, the Virginia Tech is coming up, and we're going to talk about how to create a monument to the Hawk's Nest Tunnel disaster that people could walk through and allow them to possibly have that experience and understand what this is. There are people who don't like the story of Hawk's Nest, but it happened. And just another concept to show you all, this is real. We can take buildings that look like this and turn them into this. It's not overnight and it's not inexpensive, but it's better than, in my opinion, than a lot of other things that could have happened. That could be a parking lot now, but for what? I'm getting a lot of people talking to me about parking lots lately. And again, here's some of the historic resources you all can go to. Again, I'm always available to help for any of this, but these are local agencies and state agencies that work with this stuff. I've used the split rail fence here as an example of something we're working on along US 60 here. How do we create, kind of uplift that historical environment that is 60 from Hawk's Nest to the top of Sewell Mountain? One of the ways is to bring back these old split rail fences and install it, therefore creating this visual corridor which ties everything together in this experience like that. And black walnut is not, they don't use it a lot, so a lot of lumber people say, yeah, go ahead and take that, we'd rather just not be bothered with it. I'm trying to make that work. And that's it. And this is another AI thing. Remember when everyone was doing this on Facebook? I decided to do it. But you're welcome to get that information, snap it on your phone so you know how to get a hold of me. And I'll be happy to talk about any of this at length, obviously. So thank you all very much for your time. And any questions that I can answer, you can come up to me afterwards. All right, well, thank you all very much.